The Black Monster is a legendary figure in the 1999 video game The Legend of Dragoon. It appears as a demon who roams the earth, leaving death and destruction in its wake. The Black Monster's history spans back 11,000 years to the Dragon Campaign, the brutal war fought between humans and the magical creatures known as Winglies. Under the rule of Emperor Melbu Frahma, the Winglies sought to dominate everything in the world, from what children they would permit the privilege of being born to the final destination of the soul after death. It was this all-encompassing desire for supremacy that led the Winglies to pursue new sources of magical power, and in their search for greater knowledge, they found something truly horrifying. They discovered the existence of the 108th fruit of the divine tree, a creature known to them as the Verage Embryo. It was christened by the Winglies as the god of destruction, a divine entity created for the singular purpose of forming a new and better world by extinguishing the old one. Acknowledging the threat it represented, Melbu Frahma tore the god's soul from its body, ensuring that its cataclysmic birth could never end his reign. Unfortunately, the Wingly dictator had been too greedy to abandon the wellspring of power offered by the god, and so he imprisoned the spirit within a crystal. Melbu used the crystal as a source of boundless energy. It boosted his powers to levels inconceivable to even Wingly kind. With it, he could enslave all life. But the tyrant's hubris was shaken when humans rose up to overthrow him. Empowered by supernatural abilities granted to them by dragons, the humans fought back against the Wingly menace. In the final battle, the Dragoon leader Zeeg engaged Melbu Frahma and slew him in single combat. But the climactic clash had shattered the crystal sphere, freeing the Verage Embryo's soul from captivity. The god of destruction was exultant. It could now be born to carry out its terrible purpose. Yet the wandering soul was barred from returning to its original flesh, as the Winglies had plucked the vacant body from the divine tree and transported it into space. Its eternal stillness inspired later astronomers to refer to it as the moon that never sets. Unable to simply travel to the moon, the soul was forced to possess a human infant instead. At the very moment of the child's birth, the moon turned a blood-red hue in the sky, drawing a great deal of attention to the newborn. This ominous event would result in the infant and its successors receiving a most enduring name, the Moonchild. One of the few inhabitants of Endiness to unearth the secret of the Moonchild was Melbu Frahma. However, as both a Wingly and sister of the late tyrant, she couldn't act against the threat directly. Her people had sustained too many losses in the war. What's more, Charles knew humanity's leaders wouldn't trust her, so she and her fellow Wingly compatriots went about securing the signet spheres, which held the moon in place above the sky. As long as the signets remained, the Moonchild could never fulfill its destiny. Yet the Moonchild was far from powerless. From a very early age, it possessed an ability to bewitch the minds of those nearby, encouraging them to perceive the child as a messiah who would rid the world of evil and usher in a new age of holy bliss. While more powers would manifest within the child over time, its unique ability to influence sentient creatures proved valuable indeed. With this method, it acquired a cult of feverishly loyal followers. Charles realised it wouldn't be long before the Moonchild would exploit the people of the planet to destroy the signets and reclaim its flesh. Therefore, she needed someone to stop the Verage Embryo before it could finish its apocalyptic crusade. That someone would turn out to be the Darkness Dragoon, Rose. Following the end of the Dragon Campaign, Rose discovered that she was the sole surviving Dragoon. She had lost all of her companions in the final battle, including her lover Zeeg and dear friend Shirley. She was approached by Charles, who offered her an important task: to assassinate the Moonchild. After learning about the Verage Embryo and the danger it posed, Rose agreed to carry out the deed. She sought out the Moonchild and killed it. But her victory was a temporary one. While the body housing the soul had died, the spirit itself was immortal and free to be born again in another 108 years. This span of time is significant as it directly correlates to the Verage Embryo's numerical position as the 108th fruit of the divine tree. After counting 108 years, the soul transmigrates to a new body, beginning its crusade anew. So Charles offered Rose a magical choker which prevented aging, allowing the lone dragoon to eliminate the Moonchild whenever it reappeared. Rose was faced with a difficult decision: either live out the rest of her years and slowly wither away, or spend an eternity seeking out the Moonchild in a never-ending game of hunter and prey. Although it's never explained to us why Rose chose such a sad and lonely path, we can infer her reasons for doing so. Under her reserved and stoic persona, there's a deeply traumatized human being who was left broken by the events of the Dragon campaign. In that last battle, Rose could only watch in horror as the man she loved was slowly reduced to an inanimate statue by the petrifaction spell cast on him by Melbu Frahma. She didn't even have a chance to recover Zeeg's body, as the ongoing destruction of Cadessa swept her away before she could reach him. Alone and possibly suffering from survivor's guilt, Rose embraced the role for which she was uniquely prepared. Perhaps in her mind, it was a way to atone for the friends and companions she failed to save during the war. Once every 108 years, Rose waited for telltale signs of the Verage Embryo's reincarnation. When the moon that never sets glowed red, she followed the trail of rumours to the child and eliminated it without exception. As time went on, circumstances drove her to become less merciful, since killing the child did not free those enraptured by its influence. Anyone in the surrounding area who was subjected to the child's mental powers also had to die, to prevent them from preparing the way for the next incarnation. It was a drastic measure which Rose took no pleasure in. In these dark moments, she shrouded herself in a veil of smoke and fire. The villagers who had fallen under the Moonchild's influence would see Rose as a monstrous nightmare, incapable of compassion or mercy. When duty calls, she would transform into a heartless killer, murdering anyone who threatened the sanctity of the world, from the infant Moonchild to the innocent townsfolk. For the next 11,000 years, Rose went on hunting down the Verage Embryo's mortal vessels. However, despite her best efforts, she couldn't prevent the legend of the Moonchild from spreading, and soon religions began to sprout, adopting the child as their messiah. Because of the severity of her methods, Rose became universally despised. Her actions had earned her the title of the Black Monster, who was demonized and reputed to be the most diabolical creature to exist in all of creation.
Why did the gods create him? The Black Monster. He appears in various legends as a demon who rebels against and devours the gods. An evil plague that rejects peace in the world. A god that is the moon that never sets. The moon that never sets glows red every 108 years. It is a sign that a herald will be sent to Earth. The herald is known to us as the Moonchild. The legend says the Moonchild revives the gods on Earth and purifies the world. The Black Monster abhors, hates, and despises it, and kills the Moonchild. This sad karma is endless. This god stays forever in the sky, and the world is in never-ending chaos.
With various religions perpetuating the lie that the Moonchild was some holy icon, its reputation as a saviour endured throughout history. On the other hand, scholars and priests preached the Black Monster to be an avatar for chaos and destruction. But even with the belief system of an entire civilization pitted against her, Rose couldn't be stopped. Her dragoon powers made short work of the towns where the Moonchild manifested, and the veil of smoke she used as a disguise ensured no one would recognize her. Between murders, it's believed Rose lived a modest life, drifting aimlessly across endiness without purpose. She was likely unable to settle down for very long in case anyone happened to notice she wasn't aging. For a time, she had Michael, her faithful vassal dragon, who was an enormous comfort to her, but years of battle took its toll on Michael. Eventually, he turned feral, refusing to obey Rose's commands, and started blindly lashing out against friend and foe alike. It had gotten so bad that one day Rose had no choice but to kill her beloved dragon before he could become a greater danger to herself and others. As people with limited lifespans, our brains aren't wired to comprehend each day in a life that stretches over 11,000 years. We can only imagine the toll it must have taken on Rose's psyche, from the boredom she must have experienced to the emotional anguish of seeing loved ones die as she stayed cemented in time. She must have felt extreme psychological pain, especially after losing Michael, the last precious thing that connected her to her former life. In private, Rose admits that she has all but forgotten what it feels like to smile. She can't even remember the last time she laughed. It's remarkable that after all the suffering she inflicted and endured, she refused to take off her choker and abandon her task. This really speaks to the strength of Rose's character. She's committed to seeing her mission through, no matter how long it takes. Given how often we see her reflect on her past, we can presume she carried on because she didn't want to tarnish the memory of her fallen comrades. Zieg and the rest of her fellow dragoons gave their lives to free humanity from slavery. If she allowed the world to fall, then their sacrifice would be meaningless. Rose cannot allow that, and so she exists in a state of perpetual watchfulness, in preparation for the next time the Moonchild appears. 18 years prior to the start of the game, Rose learned that the Moonchild was residing in the village of Neet, in the northern kingdom of Mil-Sazao. However, it was believed the Verage Embryo's current incarnation was Princess Luvia, heir to the throne. Due to her royal lineage, the Moonchild was now guarded by a company of fully armoured knights, rather than the usual peasants Rose was accustomed to dealing with. Still, even the best swordsmen in the land were no match for her powers. Unbeknown to Rose, her former fiancé Zieg was now alive and well in Neet. After thousands of years of imprisonment, Melbu Frahma's petrifaction spell waned, and Zieg's body was freed. He entered society as a free man, deciding to marry and father a child, all the while having no idea that the woman he once loved had also survived the previous 11,000 years. Masking her appearance, Rose descended upon Neet, igniting a firestorm. She set the town ablaze and slaughtered scores of people in search for the princess. But the Moonchild eluded her. Rose quickly learned from one terrified resident that Luvia and her entourage had escaped aboard a ship. Meanwhile, Zieg had fled with his wife and son into the forest, unaware that they were under attack from his ex-lover. Once he had got his family to safety, he headed back. Zieg's wife, Claire, who was a skilled martial artist in her own right, followed her husband, believing she could help. But their efforts to try to stop the Black Monster ended in catastrophe. Upon returning to Neet, Zieg activated his dragoon spirit, but in that precise moment, the long-dead Wingly dictator Melbu Frahma took possession of Zieg's body. During their last battle, Melbu tethered his soul to Zieg's dragoon spirit, where he patiently waited for thousands of years, till the day when Zieg would try to transform. In the instant Zieg unleashed his powers, Melbu seized control of the man's flesh. Abandoning the dragoon spirit in the debris, the revived Wingly departed, leaving the burning village to its fate. It's presumed that Sieg's wife Claire had met her end at the hands of Rose, who slew her as she left for the coast in pursuit of Princess Lovia. However, I like to propose another possibility. What if Claire hadn't been killed by Rose, but by the possessed Sieg? Just imagine if she had been murdered by her own husband while under Melbu Frahma's influence. The game doesn't confirm what really happened either way, but personally, I think it'd be more tragic if Claire had returned to town to support Sieg, only to see him suddenly turn against her. In any event, Rose chased the fleeing ship and caught up to the vessel before massacring everyone on board, including the princess. Believing her mission was accomplished, she left the ship to float aimlessly. However, Rose made a fatal error. Princess Lovia wasn't the Moonchild. She had a twin sister who had been separated from the royal entourage in the course of their frantic escape. This infant, who had been cut off from anyone who had knowledge of her royal status, was adopted and resettled in the small town of Salez, south of the kingdom of Serdio. The girl was given the name Shana and became much beloved by the people of that village, including our main protagonist Dart, who also relocated there after losing his parents to the Black Monster. Not realizing her mistake, Rose returned to wandering the world, confident that the Moonchild wouldn't appear for another century. Whilst travelling, she meets Dart for the first time and saves him from nearly being devoured by a dragon, which kicks off the events of the main story. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video into the history of the Black Monster. In my opinion, I think Rose is one of the more intriguing characters from the Legend of Dragoon. She has a very deep and painful backstory, and despite all the terrible things she's done, I cannot help but empathise with her plight. She starts off as a mysterious character, but I do appreciate how the game slowly peels back the layers of her cold exterior to reveal the trauma she is trying to keep hidden. As her time with Dart and the others goes on, Rose gradually begins to open up to her fellow party members and learns to trust again. If you have thoughts about Rose, or her more terrifying Black Monster persona, please feel free to share them in the comments. Do leave a like if you enjoyed this analysis, and for more content about the Legend of Dragoon, please subscribe. All the best, and goodbye for now.